Hello, my name's Eric, and welcome to Southern Tier Gardening. For today's video, I wanted to start by showing you guys what I've been harvesting this week. Then I'm going to do a full walk through the gardens, a full garden tour. And lastly, I'm going to talk about how important good crop rotation is to the overall health of your plants and your gardens. So let's get started. I did harvest one full row this week of my Yukon Gold potatoes. I planted a 20-foot row back on February 13th, and I got just over 100 potatoes out of that row. You guys can see I got some real good sized potatoes here, but I also got quite a few small potatoes. Now, I did harvest this row a couple weeks early. These potatoes would have gotten bigger, but I kind of needed the garden space, so I did go ahead and harvest this row. But another reason why I did that is later tonight I'm going to make a batch of salt potatoes. And I'll specifically, that's what I'll use a lot of these smaller ones for. Salt potatoes are a regional side dish from upstate New York. If you've never had them, go ahead and Google. They're super easy to make. And yeah, I would give them a try. So yeah, I'm super excited about making some salt potatoes tonight. I got the kettle out. I even got some Hoffman snappy grillers to have with them, some good hot dogs. So very excited about tonight's dinner. I've also been harvesting lots of scallions this week. Scallions don't like the heat, and this past week we had our first couple days of 90-degree temperatures. So you can see my container of scallions, they're starting to fall over. I pretty much have to eat these this week, which won't be a problem. They're absolutely delicious. So that's what I harvested this week. Over here is my kitchen garden, and I have my herbs growing in this area. I also have geraniums growing. I have zinnias. That small flower right here, this is a dahlia. And also, this is the area I have rosemary. And I've shown you guys before, but I also have 2 cayenne pepper plants growing in this area. And you can see I have quite a few peppers forming, and they seem to be doing real good in this pot. I also I just planted this today. This is Thai basil. Down here is the regular, hey Mabes, down here is the regular Italian basil. But last year I grew Thai basil for the first time and just absolutely fell in love with it. You can see it flowers pretty regularly. It does real well in the heat. So all these plants that I have in this area love the heat and the sun. So, well, except the scallions. I'm gonna have to plant something else in that pot. But otherwise, this is my kitchen garden. So next we can go over here. And as I walk over here, like I say, I wanted to talk to you guys today about the importance of crop rotation. And as we stand here, you can see I have 2 garden plots. And the basic idea of crop rotation is it's not always possible, but you want to try not to plant the same variety of plant or the same family of plants in the same spot in your garden year after year. So in other words, the area of your garden where you plant tomatoes, ideally, the following year, you want to plant something different in that area. You want to move your plants around. When I started gardening, I only gardened in this plot. This plot is about 5 years old. This one over here, where I grow my potatoes, this is only a couple years old. So originally, when I was planting just here, if I say on this side, if I had my where I've got my squash, the following year, I would put the squash over on this side and vice versa. Put tomatoes here, put tomatoes there the following year. So that's the basic idea of crop rotation. So I'll talk about that a little bit more, but we can go over here. Hey, Norman, why don't you get out of there? Good boy. So over here, these are my potato plants. And you can see over here to the left-hand side, that's where I harvested those Yukon Gold. So I've got a nice open space over here. The reason I did that, if you look at the plants on my TV tray here, these plants on this side, these are okra transplants. And okra loves the summer heat. So I got these plants this weekend, and my plan is I'm going to plant a full row. I've got 12 okra transplants, and I'm going to plant a full row on about 2 foot, maybe 18-inch to 2 foot spacing, a full row of okra. So that's why I kind of had to get the potatoes out of there. Now, the rest of these potatoes, I will probably dig out of here next weekend. They're really starting to die back. They're mature, but I'm just going to try to get as much size into these last rows of potatoes as I can. The other thing I did this weekend in this garden, if you look down here where it's a little darker, on this end of the garden, I prepared this area for planting. I cultivated the soil, dug it up, kind of turned it into itself. I also amended that area with a lot of compost. I used about 1 bag of black cow, and I used about 2 wheelbarrow full loads of my own homemade compost. So this area is heavily amended, ready to plant, and what I planted there are Cherokee tan pumpkins. I planted the seeds, and I've talked to you guys about this. They grow on really long vines. So my plan, and I did this last year and it worked really well, is as these plants start to grow, I can kind of train the vines to grow around the perimeter of this garden. So I'll have okra, pumpkins, and what I'll do after these potatoes are harvested is in the middle area, I'm going to plant sweet potatoes. Hey, Mabes, why don't you get out of there? There you go, baby girl. So that's the plan for this garden. All 3 of these crops love the summer heat. Sweet potatoes, okra, and those Cherokee tan pumpkins, they absolutely love the summer heat. So it's just perfect timing to be able to, once the potatoes come out, I can come right in here with some summer crops and make the most of this garden space. I also have some marigolds here that I'm going to be planting later today. I do them in a container, and I will put the container over there near my other garden. Marigolds are great for attracting bees, but they're also really good for, they have chemicals in them that naturally kind of keep away pests and things. They keep away some bad insects that you don't want in your garden. So So yeah, that's the plan for this. I'm going to be planting okra later today. I have my pumpkin seeds planted, and the last thing over here on this tray is they just had some beautiful eggplant transplants. So I picked up a 6-pack, and I'm going to squeeze those eggplant into this garden also. Eggplant is another crop that loves the heat. They thrive right through the summer down here. So I couldn't pass it up. These plants looked so nice. I just had to grab them, and I'm going to put them somewhere. I haven't decided yet, but they're going to go somewhere on this side. The variety of okra that I like to grow is called Clemson Spineless. And if you've never seen okra transplants, this is what the plant looks like when it's young. So that's what's happening over on this side of the garden. Now, talking about crop rotation again, you want to try to start to learn about what families of plants there are, because basically you don't want to think about just tomatoes or squash. You want to kind of think about the families of plants. And what I grow, I basically split up into 3 main categories of plants. The first big group are called nightshades. Nightshades include tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and potatoes. Potatoes is kind of the surprising one. I did not know that early on, that potatoes are actually a member of the nightshade family. So that's the first big group. So you want to think about where you planted your nightshades that particular season. The next big group, especially in the summer vegetables, are called cucurbits. And I remember that because they include your cucumbers. So the cucurbit family includes cucumbers, all your squash, your summer squash, your winter squash, your pumpkins. This family also includes things like watermelon and cantaloupe. That's your cucurbits. So in other words, like before I had that second gardening area over there, to use this side as an example, you can see I've got yellow squash right here, which are a cucurbit. The following year, I would make sure to plant the cucumbers and the squash over on this end, and I would plant the tomatoes over here. The reason you do this is for disease prevention. I've talked a lot about diseases live in your soil. It's hard to get rid of them once they're established. So the certain diseases go after certain families of plants. So in other words, if you plant your tomatoes and your peppers and your eggplant in an area one year, the following year you want to bring in your cucurbits, and that will break the cycle of disease because it will be different pests and diseases that go after your cucurbits. So that's what I'm talking about with crop rotation. Now, I know that's not always possible depending on the size of your gardens, and every situation's different. And it's not always possible. But you want to try, in my opinion, you want to try to do your best to not plant the same things in the same spot year after year. I mentioned 3 families of plants. The third big family of plant is called brassicas. Now, this doesn't apply much to me this time of year because your brassicas, they all grow in cool weather. I grow brassicas down here throughout the winter time. That family of plants include things like cabbage. It's all your greens, collard greens, it's broccoli, it's cauliflower. A lot of lettuces are in this family. These are things that like cool temperatures. So I plant them in the late fall and grow them through the winter, but I use my brassicas as a family to break up, and to do crop rotation. So if I planted nightshades in a particular area, I might come in behind them with brassicas. But one of the main reasons why I dug this second garden space was for crop rotation. So now, like over here, last year, this was the garden where I had all my tomatoes and my cucumbers and my squash. Now this year I have potatoes here, and in between last winter I grew brassicas in this plot. Then over here, this was the garden space last year where I had my potatoes. So I'm constantly switching these garden spaces. Last year, this was the garden space that I grew my mustard green cover crop. So next year, this will be the garden where I grow the mustard. And over here, after these cucurbits and nightshades are taken out this fall, I will grow my brassicas over on this side. And I usually grow cabbages, collard greens. I'm going to try to grow broccoli. I've never grown broccoli before. I'm going to try it this winter. But anyway, that's kind of big picture what I'm talking about with crop rotation. And like I say, it's not always possible. You don't have to do it. It's not an absolute rule. It's not like watering or fertilizing or sunlight. But if you have the opportunity or the space, I definitely think it should be something you're thinking about when you're planning out where you put stuff in your garden. So I hope that kind of helps you out with that. Oh, so a question might be, I've told you how once I harvest the rest of these potatoes, I've talked to you about I'm going to come right in behind here and plant sweet potatoes. And believe it or not, traditional white potatoes or Irish potatoes, like these red potatoes or Yukon Golds, they're not in the same family as sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are a completely different family. I hope I don't get this wrong, but I believe sweet potatoes, they're kind of unique. They're in a family that's called mallow. But all you need to know is they're not the same family as potatoes. That's why it works out so good for me here having this second garden plot is sweet potatoes, once again, they love the heat. To successfully grow sweet potatoes, you have to have at least 90 days of like 90-degree weather. The hotter, the better. So that's why it works out perfect for me. I can harvest my potatoes down here in May. Then I can plant my sweet potatoes and they will just thrive all summer, and I will harvest them usually in August or September. So it works out perfect. But I was surprised to learn, I remember when I learned that sweet potatoes and regular potatoes are not related. So that's why I plant this way, or I time it this way. I put my potatoes in, then I follow it with the sweet potatoes. And then next year, I'll plant my potatoes over there again, and then follow those with sweet potatoes. So I'm constantly switching these two gardens back and forth. So over here, as far as just kind of looking around at the progress this week, everything is still growing well, good and healthy. I did put another run of string on my determinate tomatoes. You can see they're getting taller, so I had to come up and put another run of string on there. But you can see these plants are doing real well. I've got lots of flowers here. I haven't seen any tomatoes yet on my determinants, but it's just a matter of time. This particular variety here, these are my Carolina Golds, and I do have some tomatoes starting to form under here on these. They're doing well. This is my cucumber trellis. You can see now that The cucumber vines are definitely to the top. These are doing great. Lots of flowers under here. I'm just really happy with the way this trellis looks. Doing real good over here. I'll show you. This is kind of what I'm seeing all over these vines. This is a nice cucumber growing right there. So I'm very happy with this cucumber trellis, doing real well. This back corner of the garden here are my peppers. They're doing pretty good. Down here I've got some banana peppers starting to form. These are my jalapenos over here. They're just starting to pop. And I have lots of indeterminate tomatoes forming. You can see this cluster right here. Nice big tomatoes starting to form. Real happy with these. If we come around this side on the end here, these are my indeterminate tomato plants. These are my cherry tomatoes. And I'll just show you real quick down here. These cherry tomatoes are always real cool because they kind of grow like grapes. They grow on these groups or clusters of fruit. And you can see this variety is called, oh, it's escaping me. What's the variety? Oh, I can't think of it. Oh, Juliet's hybrid. And you can see they're kind of like a mini Roma tomato shape. So I'm starting to see lots of fruits developing, and the plants look healthy. They're nice and tall. So I'm very pleased with the progress of this garden. Oh, real quick before I wrap things up, I just wanted to show you my eggplant plants. These are doing well. And if we get down here, you can see the eggplants are flowering. And I just love these eggplant flowers. They got purple petals on them, the yellow center. But that's very promising once you see that, because next, within a week or so, I'll start to see some little baby eggplants forming on these plants. So yeah, that is about wraps it up for today. As always, I can't thank you guys enough for joining me and watching my videos. I hope you guys get something out of them. And later today, I'm going to plant the rest of those marigolds. I probably will get that okra in the ground. We'll see. If I don't, it'll be next week. And then 2 weeks from now, I'll have those white potatoes out of there, and I'll be planting sweet potatoes. So that's what's coming up next. And so lastly, I just kind of wanted to wish all the moms out there a happy Mother's Day, and we'll see you next time at Southern Tier Gardening.